Back in 1996, the very first Resident Evil game was released. This game gave Resident Evil the title of scariest series ever, because no other game really had the amount of terror these games offered. But in later years, more games came out with the survival horror genre attached to them, and they really did scare you a lot more than the Resident Evil series did. So the series did start to lose popularity, a lot of people wanting more terror in their games rather than just the jump scares that this series offered. So it seemed like Capcom started releasing a lot of spin-offs, most of them not as successful as the main series. It's like Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3 were some of the most well-received of the series, while Outbreak and Outbreak 2 really didn't offer much to the series. Resident Evil 4 was definitely the best of the series ever. It really was a contender for one of the best games of 2005, and it was released 4 different times, not in the same year for most part, going with the GameCube game first, and then the PC and the PS2 version, and then the Wii edition marking the end of the ports. And Resident Evil 4 is the best Resident Evil game to date by far. The storyline of this game it's not really an important part of the game, but some people will want a good storyline to go with the game, so you're not just shooting up a bunch of random people. So this game, the main storyline, you're a secret agent named Leon, and you have to search for the president's daughter who's gone missing. It's sort of a cliched kind of story. It's sort of basically the same as the Save the Princess story. But, it takes a different approach to the previous Resident Evil storylines where you're shooting zombies. In this game, you're not really fighting zombies, they're more regular people. And, well, some of them are infected by a certain thing that happens later in the game, but, it's not the best storyline ever, but it'll get you through the game. The difficulty of the game it's not that it's really hard that you'll want to throw the game away out, but some of the scenarios are quite challenging, especially when they throw in a bunch of chainsaw guys, which really isn't easy. But some of the scenarios are quite easy. There's no real tutorial level in this game, and the first level is really difficult for a first-timer. So like, right at the very beginning, your first fight will only have 1, and then your next fight only has 2 or 3 enemies, I believe. But then once you follow it to the end of the first path, you're faced by like 30 regular enemies and 3 chainsaw enemies. It's really overwhelming for a first level, and you can miss the shotgun in the first level, so then you'll only have your handgun, and that's basically a guaranteed loss for most people, since the handgun can only kill 1 person at a time, and more than likely you'll have 5 people on you. So it's a bit hard in most parts of the game, but you'll get through it easy. It's not that hard because there's a lot of save points and respawn points, so if you do die, you're not that far away from where you died, so you don't have much backtracking to do. But it can get a bit hard, especially with the escorting of Ashley when you get to her. It becomes a bit hard because you have to sort of control 2 people without controlling 1. Yeah, but like I said, it's nothing you should worry about. Previous Resident Evil games were really bashed for their controls, since the characters had like a tank-like feel, which was really hard to use, so you had to be facing one direction and then press the up button. And if you press left or right, you wouldn't really move left or right, you just turn your character that way, then you'd have to press up to move that way. So it did take a long time to get used to those kind of controls, and some people just didn't like the series because it had those controls. Resident Evil 4 does drop that control scheme and gives it a more free control, though it does have a bit of the tank controls in it. It's not as noticeable, and you do get a grasp of the controls right away. The gun has a laser, so it's easy to target the enemies, and unlike the previous Resident Evil games where you can just shoot up, down, or straight, I believe, you can really just shoot anywhere on the screen you want by pointing the laser to the certain area you want to shoot. Another notable fact is that it still takes a long time to turn, so it's not like a platformer where you can turn around right away. You have to turn, and it can take a couple seconds to turn right around, and by the time you turn around you might have your head decapitated or something. But it's not that bad of an experience. Now this game took the series in a bold new direction. It was really action-oriented instead of the previous ones where you were just fighting a few zombies and then solving some silly puzzles, and it really drops the survival feel, and because you're given a lot of weapons and you can just shoot everything in your path instead of having to run and just heal from the hits you get from the zombies because you're trying to conserve ammo. This one you're given a fair number of ammo and health packs and stuff, but it's a lot different than the previous game. the AI is not incredibly stupid like it is in the other games, where they'll just walk at you with your arms hanging out, making weird groaning sounds. This time, they'll actually try and move away from your gunfire since they can see your laser, it seems like. But instead of just shooting your enemy and then they fall down, there's a lot of ways to kill the enemies. You can kick them, you can shoot them in the arm and they'll drop their weapon, you can hit them in the knee and they'll fall down, you can shoot them in the head and their head will blow up. And so there's a lot of variety in the game. It's not as repetitive as the other ones, but there's a lot of weapons in this game, and each weapon, for the most part, is customizable. You can change the firepower speed, the reload speed, the speed of shooting, capacity, etc. And unlike the other games, this one's really gory. I've talked about you can shoot their heads off, but you can also get decapitated and watch your head roll around while blood pours out from your neck. You can pick up enemies and smash their heads into the ground. You can set people on fire. You can kill 10 people at the same time with a shotgun and then watch them explode into an explosion of blood and guts and watch it all fall to the floor. One of the downside of the amount of weapons there are in the game is the changing weapon is really annoying. You have to go into your attaché case, which doesn't hold much compared to the size of the guns, and each attaché case can only have a certain amount of squares. So like the handgun takes 8 squares, I believe, but you might only have 50 squares. So you can't hold very many weapons, and then each ammo will take 2 slots, and healing drinks will take 2 slots. The game doesn't stop with the action, though. You're continuously fighting hordes and hordes of these people who just act like zombies. There's some glitches in the enemies, like the chainsaw people. They'll sometimes attack you without even revving their chainsaws, or they'll attack you and you won't get hit for some reason. And the game has a lot of escorting when you get to a certain point, which will turn a lot of people off, because escort games have never really been as fun as other games. And there's a traveling merchant where you can buy weapons and healing sprays and stuff.
What are you buying? What are you selling?
You're not really feeling as isolated as you are in the other games where you're like the only person left. This one you're given this weird fantasy-like character who just doesn't really fit the horror/action genre that this game tries to give. One of the most noticeable features about this game is its amazing graphics. The GameCube version, which was released first, had the best graphics out of all the ports. Everything in this game was amazing. It really looked like a next-generation game on a last-generation console. The backgrounds and the people were really realistic. It really looked like you were just controlling a real person who was video recorded through a digital camera or something. The colors were varied and the textures were crisp and clear. Everything was really bright and vibrant and graphic and in your face. The PlayStation 2 and the PC graphics were still great, though they didn't compare to the GameCube graphics after close inspection. Everything looked a bit toned down. It was a bit darker, duller backgrounds, colors weren't as varied. It just didn't have the same amazing visual appeal that the GameCube did, though they didn't bring down the experience at all. The Wii version, which was the last version, had the same graphics as the PS2 and the PC graphics, though it didn't change from the past ports. It did begin to feel a bit dated, since it was released a year later, and there were no graphical improvements at all, so everything starts to feel a bit dated and repetitive, though it doesn't bring down the experience too much.
In the end, Resident Evil 4 gets an 8.7 out of 10.